Guys, welcome to the Rockpit and welcome to Australia.
Thank you.
So, this is really special for me to be doing a face-to-face interview with you guys. And I just wanted to thank you for taking the time out to do that.
Thank you.
Obviously, it's a day off for you guys. Now, you guys are in the middle of 20 years of Ocean Avenue.
See how long we can stretch it.
Yeah.
I think this is the last stop. This is probably the last stop. Big finish.
Perth, Adelaide, and Melbourne are in the bag.
Yeah.
Out of those first three shows, which one stood out for you guys?
I mean, I still feel 10 feet tall from that Margaret Court show in Melbourne. They were all special, and I think we talk about an Australian run, and we had fans that were there for us, but it was kind of at the tail end before we called the final tour. But just Yellowcard fans are just showing up for us right now. They're singing the songs. It's amazing.
Incredible. So, three shows left: Sydney, Newcastle, and Brisbane, which is sold out. Congratulations, guys, on that one.
Thank you.
Melbourne. Is there something unique about a Melbourne crowd for you guys?
I mean, them showing up this time the way that they did.
It's pretty cool when that happens, right?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we're going to end up telling this story in every interview we do, but it's very relevant. It's been 10 years since we played Margaret Court for the first time, and when we came in 2015, I think it was 2015, right?
Yeah.
It was early 2015.
Yeah.
When we came in 2015, we were already close to realizing there was a conversation about to happen to say, are we going to still be a band anymore? And the answer ended up being no. And when we got booked at Margaret Court, we were pretty intimidated to be playing this arena at that time. And it ended up, the show was like less than half sold. No one in the seats in the back. And it was a pretty rough night, and that was a moment where we started to, that was a real turning point moment. And I say that with the utmost respect to the people who came to the show. This isn't like a slight on, where were you or anything like that. It's part of being in the music business. You have ups and downs, and that night really stood out because of the scope of it. It's hard not to remember it because the room is so big. And we came back here 10 years later, and we were a couple hundred tickets off. We were 95% sold out.
It was only 8 tickets left.
We're gonna say it. Okay. It was very close.
Yeah, it was.
And this time, all the seats were full in the back. And there is no greater example of the turnaround that we've had as a band, and how revitalized our career has become. When we broke up, it was a breakup. We weren't coming back. We've had the same booking agent for over 20 years. We started with her at the very beginning, and she's always been with us. And she talked us into playing this one show in 2022 in Chicago, and it was, okay, it's a festival. It's not the band getting back together. But we knew after that hour of music that we had to get back. We had to start playing music together again. And that was 3 years ago now, and it just continues to steamroll. It's getting bigger and bigger by the day. I mean, I think that the band is bigger than we were when we had a song on Top 40 radio 22 years ago.
These shows, this is a moment for Yellowcard. It's bigger than we were when you could hear Yellowcard everywhere.
It's really interesting
but now
too,
like the concerts.
Because back then, you'd go to the mall, or you'd go to see a movie, or you'd be on tour and you go anywhere, and pretty much always would get stopped, recognized, where we were, in major places like Australia and the States, and major markets. But now that doesn't really happen anymore. But we're selling out Margaret Court Arena, so it's I prefer it that way, if I'm being honest. But it's just such a wild phenomenon to reach the lowest point I think we had ever really felt collectively, professionally, and say it's time to step away from this on our own terms. And we did, and we went out on this tour that we did in 2016 and early 2017, and sold out every show all around the world, and it was incredible, and it was the send-off we all wanted, and we're glad we did it that way. But there's just no making sense of being back here now and almost selling out Margaret Court Arena. It's a real mountaintop moment for the band, you know.
Fantastic. I mean, I first came across you guys with the release of Ocean Avenue in 2003. I was actually loaned a copy of it by a buddy of mine. Don't know how he came across it.
Good friend.
Don't care how he came across it. But this is the friendship that we had. We would trade albums with each other. It's like, have a listen to this. Yeah. And, you know, for me, there is something very, very special about that first.
Yeah.
That album, that first
Absolutely.
full length. I mean, it had rawness and an energy and an honesty to it that I found really refreshing. There was lots of, you know, pop punk happening at the time.
Yep.
But there was something within the Yellowcard sound and the DNA of that Ocean Avenue album that, you know, just really grabbed me. Maybe it was the different instrumentation of mandolins and violins being thrown in there, the extra strings, but it was also the lyrical content and the stories that were told within those songs that really captivated me.
Thank you. I don't know how I did that.
It gave the genre for me a really fresh flavour. It was something that, you know, there was everybody doing it, and it all seemed to be a little bit copy-paste. But you guys had something very, very unique, and I want to thank you for that, because it revived that whole genre for me as well. Tell me about the formative days and the way that you came up with the concept to go and use different instrumentation in that interpretation of punk rock.
Yeah, I think it really just was a product of the circle of friends that we had at that time. And we went to a public school system, but it had a arts program instead of traditional sports or other electives, and specialty school. And we really were a group of friends that listened to the same music, that, you know, like the late 90s kind of skate, punk rock, No Effects, Bad Religion. That was like kind of the common ground. But I played in orchestra, and he was singer, music theater.
I mean, I played guitar and stuff, but I wasn't in Yellowcard when they formed, and I had no plans to play music professionally. I had studied theater and acting since I was this big, so it's wild that I ended up.
And you find out that Ryan's mom's parents are out of town, and we go over on a Thursday night and cause trouble at his house and write some songs, but that creative moment wasn't judged at that age for us. It was kind of celebrated, and other students at Douglas Anderson School of Arts in Jacksonville, Florida, supported each other, and multiple other bands. And then, you know, Ryan had spent some time in a different band in California, and we went to college together. And when he moved back, we found ourselves together writing songs. He's like, we got to move to California. Can't make it in Florida. There's nothing here for Yellowcard. So
I think a lot of what you talk about, what you heard on that record that maybe stood out a little bit, is a lot of the bands at the time were, you know, writing from home basing from their hometowns, like where they were from, and they were still kind of living that experience. And that's what that's what they were writing about.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, we made the decisions we made, and I think that is the story that built the band and built that record, was moving to California from Florida at 20 years old. I mean, it was a real, like, we're gonna go out on a limb and sacrifice everything to make this happen, and that really informed the writing. The distance from our friends and families, the struggle to make ends meet.
It was isolation.
It's funny to talk about it being refreshing for the genre, because we at that time didn't even know we were a part of a genre.
Yeah. Because,
you know, we hadn't really toured with other bands that ended up being in the genre. You know, we hadn't yet toured with Newfound Glory or The Starting Line or Fall Out Boy or any of those bands that came along. We were just in our bubble. We had moved our bubble from Florida to California, but we stayed in it. You know, one of the first tours we did, first official tours that we did that was booked, was with Rise Against and the Mad Caddies. So we were still living in this kind of Fat Records, Epitaph Records world,
Yeah.
not realizing that, you know, writing all these like sad breakup songs and leaving home songs were going to end up lending themselves to the kind of second wave of pop punk, if you call, you know, No Use for a Name. I think you can even, he'll punch me in the face for calling it, but I think you can even call No Effects almost a pop punk band, because the melody, as the band went on, became so, the sensibility of the melody became so hooky. They started doing songs that were verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, you know. All those bands
The structure
began to structure
of
their
it,
songs and produce them more, not overproduce. I just mean the sonic quality of the albums was improving.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what ended up leading to the early 2000s pop punk. We just lost the punk, you know. The punk went away, and it really ended up just being pop rock, if we're being honest. But the point is just that at the time when we were recording Ocean Avenue, we were still very much in our own little space, and we had no idea that we were about to be a part of this movement that became the early 2000s Warped Tour. And I think the lyrical content, the instrumentation, was all just kind of a perfect storm of going to art school as young kids, having that creative spirit, and then going on this journey together across the entire country to relocate our lives and try to become to play music professionally. It told a different story, I think, than some other bands were telling. Not a better one or a worse one, just a different one, you know.
But I guess too, you know, if you look at the interesting side of that, it sort of set yourself up for probably the next 5 years where you didn't really have a home. The road was your home, and you know that.
We lived in the van together.
Yeah.
That was our home.
Yeah. But I mean, again, there wasn't a stable environment. It was a van. It was the road. It was shows. It was on the road again. It was pretty full on. So, did you expect or anticipate to have the success that you did, and to gain the attention that Ocean Avenue did?
No way.
I also think like the scope of what is imaginable, the life, the success, all beyond that. It was deeper and more intense and more pressure than we could imagine.
Yeah, it was really overwhelming.
Like for us, the ceiling for Yellowcard in 2001 was to get on the Warped Tour and be able to give our CD or demos to the bands that we looked up to, so we could tour with them.
I was not ready to be like singing on award shows and late night TV. I had no vocal training. I was a theater kid, but I hated musical theater. I gave no effort to like properly learning how to sing, and it crushed me. I mean, it really kind of was so overwhelming at times that I wrecked relationships over it because I was in such a bad place at times, because I was just crumbling under this stress and anxiety that I now know is what I had. Then I didn't. I was just mad at the world all the time because I was losing my voice every other night, and I was expected to perform at this super high level, and it just happened like that. And it was, hold on, we were just touring with Rise Against and the Mad Caddies playing clubs, and now it's this. And it happened too fast to figure out. And I think you used the word stability. We didn't have any of that, and I actually think that ended up contributing to that first kind of downfall of the band. In 2008, we stepped away for nearly 2.5, 3 years, something like that, because I think that lack of stability finally took its toll, and it, you know, using it as a tool for songwriting kind of ran out of gas. It was like, you could write about it and get great songs, but your humanity is being lost in this lack of family, lack of support, lack of close friendships, lack of a place to call home. All of those things just grind you down, and it's what makes this journey, this chapter, so special, because now we have our families, we have places to call home. We've really put down roots. You know, when we leave to go on tour, I know where I'm going when I get done, and I'm excited to get there. And I'm doing all of this for my family now. I'm not doing it for myself. And it's just, I don't know, it's a completely different experience this time. And I'm grateful for all of those experiences. You know, I'm grateful for that hard time and that instability and that pressure and all those lessons, because it just makes it easier to identify when those things are starting to creep in on you now. You know, and it makes it easier to enjoy what you're doing.
It led to the preparation, right? Like, we can be better in Yellowcard, we can be better musicians, because now we see and understand what it leads to, so we can prepare for that. I think that makes us stronger as a band.
Absolutely. For sure. And I guess if we travel back to that early 2000s period, what a tumultuous time it was. It was an evolution of the industry. 2001 saw the introduction of iTunes, if you can believe it, 24 years ago.
Yeah.
File sharing had been the big thing. You must have heard physical sales. I know as a die-hard music fan,
Yes.
it's always about physical product for me. I don't care what it is. It's got to be physical. I miss music magazines. I'm a geek like that. I hate the fact that everything
From that era.
comes to a
100%.
phone these days. But the beauty about that early 2000s period was that there was a shift, or what seemed to be a shift. We finally started getting, gaming consoles, and, these developers were putting new artists in these games, and that we were being subjected to them that way.
Yep.
TV and film started to pick up again, certainly in that era of plucking new bands and scattering them through movies that, became timepieces in our
pop
life,
culture hits.
as did the music, and gave us so much greater exposure. Was the fact of the way that the industry evolved something that concerned you guys back then? It's like streaming. Are we going to get paid for our music? Is our music going to hit these targets? I'm just trying to...
It wasn't until 2007-ish, really, on our third Capitol record, that we started to really kind of say, well, what's going on? This is different. The label's treating us differently. The metrics are all different now. Because we really caught the last wave of physical records. I mean, Ocean Avenue was, I think Christmas 2004, we sold like 65,000 records in a week. I mean, it was mental.
Yeah.
This little garage band from Florida that wanted to be on the Warped Tour, 4 years into our California experiment, that was happening. But in 2007, I think, that really was when Spotify and streaming started to become the conversation around every table in Hollywood. Every label person, that's all that they were talking about. And but the problem at that time was, and I think we learned this later, after we left Capitol Records, is that the labels were not ready to figure out what metrics meant what or where they should pour money into which artist. They were still only measuring it by record sales.
Yeah.
So we were still selling tickets, but we weren't selling any records. And that just didn't work in their minds.
No.
If you're not selling records, you can't be here. But we were still a band that had a rabid fan base and was touring well. But when you lose the support of the label, you lose. In our position in 2007, we had gotten to a point of the band was so big that we needed the label. We had, we were just
we had to
interlocked with them in everything we did. So when you lose the label, you kind of lose the whole thing and have to go back to zero and rethink it all. And we did, So I certainly think that the initial shock of streaming hurt us, in a way. But again, it doesn't matter, because look where we are now. We just almost sold out Margaret Arena. It's like, it's fine.
Yeah.
I think the silver lining of that time, I just moved and I found my Discman from the van and book of CDs. I'm like thousands of miles were driven with this. And going from that and recognizing that we had no control over this shift, but the good that came of it was our fans were sharing our music across those platforms. So we still saw like this consumption of Yellowcard songs, and what he's talking about is like, as a band, we couldn't necessarily figure out until the label went essentially out of business, because we were still seeing this like support from our fans. And metric, the sale, seeing Yellowcard, Ocean Avenue selling all these records, Lights and Sounds and Paper Walls, the metric was different, but the shows were felt the same.
Right. So
Yeah.
there was an incline and a decline,
yeah,
and it just, none of it made sense, I guess.
An out of balance proportion. But people vote with their feet, right? Fans were showing up for us still. So
That's exactly right. But out of all of those little placements and bits of exposure, gaming, film, TV, was there Is there one moment that sits with you guys that goes, geez, that was a great move?
Probably Madden.
Yeah.
I mean, Madden
2004.
is like, I don't know if it's the second biggest, highest selling video game in the world behind FIFA. Probably. It's probably a metric, but
Well, at that time it was, yeah.
and so that just, man, you would run into people on the street, you know, that you would never think would listen to Yellowcard that were like, I play Madden, I love that song. You know?
Yeah.
And that was Way Away, which was actually, you know, the first single off the record that kind of set everything else up. So
Yeah.
I think without that Madden exposure, I don't know. I don't know that we would have made it quite as far.
Yeah.
With Ocean Avenue as a single, because Way Away just got such an amazing bump from that outside of your traditional radio and music video, you know.
Yeah. So, you know, 3 monstrous albums under your belt: Ocean Avenue, Lights and Sound, Paper Walls. In 2008, you take the hiatus. You leave Capitol Records and were left sort of unsigned, I guess, at that stage.
Well, they dropped everyone except for Coldplay and Katy Perry.
Yeah.
We didn't make the cut. So they went out of business, they sold, and they only kept...
It actually was really cool.
It ended up working out.
We had 4 options still left on our deal. It was we had 7 records on the deal, because we renegotiated for Lights and Sounds for quite a hefty sum compared to the first record, because the first record had now sold a couple million copies, you know. But what came with that deal was, okay, but you have to make more records for us. And when Capitol Records became Capitol Music Group, which was a merger between Virgin and Capitol, and everyone we knew that had worked the first 2 records was gone. We did have a really, really kind and cool head of A&R, at least. I don't speak to everyone else that was a part of that merger, but David Walter signed the BC Boys. I mean, the dude's a legend. He was friends with our manager at the time and literally talked them into just letting us out of the deal, hands, you know, scot-free, like no ties, you know. But behind closed doors, that was, it felt more like a breakup than a hiatus.
Yeah.
We just didn't use the words breakup at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, to the point we were just talking about earlier, a lot of that happened because the label at that time, and now you have Spotify. Now you can promote so much more on your own, and there's so many more tools now. At that time, we did have the shows were solid. Then they started swiftly to be not solid because we didn't have the label. We were still signed to the label, but we didn't have the support. At that time, labels were so invested and involved in your touring and promoting your touring, because it was all one. You know, we were a radio band at that time by then, which means your campaigns are all inclusive. You know, they're pushing radio tours, everything, all at the same time. That was our tools. They were our tool, and now they were gone. And even though we were still signed there, we just got lost. They didn't. You know, they stopped pushing that record completely, pulled the plug on Paper Walls, and it just took all the gas out of the tank. And we had already been feeling that strain for months and months and months as it was declining and as the label merger was happening. And I think, you know, it wasn't fun anymore. And you don't want to play in rock and roll band if it's not fun. What's the point? That's not why we dropped out of college. You know, that's not the point in doing this.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, you know, you come back, you know, 4 albums in 5 years. When you're through thinking, Say Yes, Southern Air, Lift a Sail, and the self-titled album. After taking that time away, was there a different mentality in the way that you approached what you guys did as a band?
Starting in 2011, you mean, when we came back?
When you came back.
Man, it's hard to say or remember. I just that stretch was so. It was the most peak and valley experience imaginable. You know, it was just, we'd have these huge doors open, and then we'd have these doors just slammed shut, and it was just back to the studio, make another record. I mean, it was what 2010, late 2010 till the inevitable end in 2017 was just so up and down. So it was really kind of hard to find a mentality, a strategy. You know, the industry was still kind of figuring itself out in terms of streaming and how you rolled that into your business model and touring and everything else. And so, and we were kind of late to the game to social media streaming, because that wasn't a part of Ocean Avenue. It wasn't a part of Lights and Sounds. So now we come back to it, and they're like, you need to do this, all these things, and we were, call us old men or jaded or whatever, but we were just kind of like, well, I just want to play music.
Yeah.
I just want to play music, you know? And we learned quickly that that's just not, you can't have that attitude anymore. You still can't now. You know, we've obviously adapted in a lot of ways to try to learn how to better promote the band and live in the world we live in now. But yeah, the 2010s were hard. I mean, it was, we got by and we got to keep playing music, and I think Southern Air was probably the best chapter in that book. We had a really amazing fall US tour with the Wonder Years that year in 2012. But we went, we could go down this rabbit hole. The band, we went through a lot of personal tragedy in the 2010s, individually, you know, and it just, it wasn't fun. It just ended up not being fun, you know. And it's,
I think music-wise too, we always consider ourselves musicians. Like we want the music to be first. That's sacred for Yellowcard. And I think realizing that we were in an era of consumption, right? And so the consumerism of that music lost out to the actual art of making music and having fun. And so being able to try and learn how to market ourselves in that way, I mean, it's very apparent. It was not easy for us.
Yeah, we tried so many things, like fucking YouTube video here, or, you know, Instagram Reels weren't a thing yet, but whatever, just, you know, as each new social media platform appeared, you were trying this, that, and I think it just didn't resonate, you know, and it really kind of hindered our ability to like really break through again. And all that said, that's why it doesn't make sense to me that we're playing these massive shows now.
Yeah.
Because what changed?
Why?
You know, I mean, we're certainly very active on social media, but we're part of the reason we are, and we have more of an identity and a footprint there now, is because we're in a position with you know, the business side of what we do, where we can have someone that is fully, you know, outside of the band, that is fully steering that ship, full time, helping us keep that identity, build that identity. And she's amazing at her job, and she has really, I mean, when we started back in 2022 at Riot Fest, we had, I think, around 79 or 80,000 followers on Instagram, and that was 3 years ago, and we've more than doubled the follower count on Instagram. You know, I mean, that is not nothing.
No.
People are coming to the band, and people are finding us through those channels now. And with what we have coming up this year, we're gonna break social media. It's just we're gonna break the internet.
Bunch of old guys.
Yeah.
Look, well, we're out of time, and I'd really like to thank you both for taking time to chat to me again.
Yep.
Obviously, with the success of this run of shows, hopefully we'll see Yellowcard back in Australia shortly.
It won't take 8 years this time.
That's
fantastic.
With a new record, I mean, assuming that things go even somewhat to plan, we'll be doing a full lap around the globe again probably next year. So.
Yeah.
Look, I really look forward to the new album, seeing you guys out here again. And again, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you both. And enjoy the rest of your time in the country.
We will.
Thanks, brother.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.